I'm going to talk to you about sanctifying confidentiality, bringing confidentiality to the student in a way that is concrete and immediate and makes them feel it and experience it. Many of us have had that experience of having a student who doesn't like the confidentiality issue, and it's usually in response to something like this. It's one of these senseless things, an act of violence, a serial killer, a deal in Klebold, the guy from Denver, whose name I haven't memorized yet, but I'm sure I will, Timothy McVeigh, when in that presence of evil and commitment. So, students, this is your client. This guy grabbed someone in a park and he cut them open with a knife. And he cut them open slowly. And you've just been sent into the room to talk to him. You have no desire to speak to this man, but he's your client. You're the court-appointed attorney. And you start by being angry and disgusted with the thing that you have to deal with. Because this is something that is not conscionable that one human being could have done to another. And when you meet with him, you are even angrier than you were before because he threatened you. And then you think about it for a while. And from the anger, you transition to sadness. Sadness that another human being could do this. Sadness that you have to deal with it. You feel sorry for yourself. And you start to look for a way out of it. And you cannot find it. You're screwed. You are completely and totally screwed. And so's the client. So, the two of you are in this together. You don't really have a choice about what you're going to do other than to represent. So where do you start to get into the mind of someone who would do that? Well, you're in the stocks. Everybody knows that you're his defense attorney. The cameras are in your face. People want to know what he's told you. CNN is calling. It's a big deal. And the attention's nice, but you cannot get away from it. You are captured. And your client's sitting in jail. And he's probably going to sit in jail, perhaps for the rest of his life, if he's lucky, because the evidence is overwhelming. And this is very quickly going to turn into a death versus a non-death verdict case. So this is a big deal. He needs help. Do you have the ability? Do you have the commitment to help him? How do you open this person up to make him talk to you so that you can find something that will change the way this case is considered? Because you've got to do that. You're handcuffed by the situation that you're in, and you really must find the key to unlock these handcuffs so that you can represent this client. And that conversation with that client is the only thing you have that nobody else has, because you get to talk. And if you don't get it right, you're going to live with the consequences of not getting it right for the rest of your life. And that consequence looks like it's probably going to be death. And that's something that you feel a responsibility for. And you didn't think that you would feel that responsibility. And you don't know enough to do the job. You're lost. You know everything that everybody else knows. You can watch the news all day long, and you can listen to other pundits talk about what they think you know, or what they think was in the mind of your client. But you don't know. You have to explain to the client that you may look like the devil, but that confidentiality will allow him to tell you anything so that you can sort out why another human being would do this to somebody. Because if you can't tell that story in a way that makes sense, it's going to be a problem. And eventually he talks to you, and you learn that he has a phenomenal drug problem, and that he's been a drug addict of one type or another for the last 15 years. And he started taking drugs as soon as he could figure out where they were. And you ask him why. He says, well, I thought about killing myself at one point. I was just going to end it all. I was just going to walk out into the ocean and it would be done. But I didn't have the courage to do it. Didn't have the courage to make that happen. And he goes from being a creature of approbation to a person in despair. And the longer you talk, you learn eventually that as a child, things were done to him that were so unspeakable that he turned to rage. Things that just leached the color out of his life completely, making him nothing in the eyes of anybody, and most particularly in the eyes of himself. You get this from him. And he's been imprisoned by what happened to him as a child for the rest of his life. You found the secret, and you want to open the door to this and present that evidence. And this client has shared all this information with you. So you've now got a defense. You're where you think you need to be. You see the light. There's a way out. There's a possibility that this can at least be explained, because you learn that the person that he killed in the parking lot looks an awful lot like the person who abused him when he was defenseless. And so you go to the client, you tell him what you want to do, you talk about it, you're going to defend him, you're going to bring this forward, we're going to hire experts, we're going to put it together. And he looks at you and he says, well, no, we're not, because I would rather be put to death than have anybody else know that I was a victim like that in the past. And so this is what's happened to you with this client. And now you've got this concept of confidentiality. And is it broken? Do you break the confidentiality? This thing that you used to get him to talk to you to save his life? Or do you remain silent, as the client has now asked you to do, having learned all that you've learned, and him now being a human being?